If you are engaging an agency because of their expertise and what they're going to be able to do for you, don't tell them how to do it. Understand and collaborate with them as you go through. We do a lot of 6 month to a year marketing programs that we're putting together. Ones that we are successful with and do well with are the ones that say, you know what, we trust you. We hired you because you are experts in your field. Go do your thing, and then collaborate with us and give us, issues that we run into so we can work through them together as partners.
This is Social Pulse Podcast Agency Edition, your go-to guide to solving your biggest marketing agency challenges authentically. I'm your host, Mike Alton, and each episode is an honest and frank look at what agencies go through, from churning clients to tackling tech and ideas that you can apply to your own business. And now, the rest of today's episode. Welcome back to Social Pulse Podcast Agency Edition, where each and every week we're talking to marketing agencies like you, going through many of the same struggles you're going through and sharing their stories. Subscribe to find in each episode inspiration, motivation, and the perspiration that go into growing and scaling agencies like yours. Now, one of the reasons so many agencies close within 3 years is that the owners simply burn out from the incredibly overwhelming workload. Late nights trying to hit deadlines, long meetings in the morning with clients who are always right, and a constant churn of clients who weren't a good fit. What if there was a different way, maybe even a better way to structure your agency and approach working with clients? If the traditional agency model is broken, how should we approach doing great marketing for clients? Well, that's exactly what Chuck Hester is going to talk to us about. Chuck is a nationally renowned marketing trainer and speaker who helps businesses get the most out of the digital channels. He's the co-founder of A Purpose Partnership, a contrarian marketing and business consulting firm that works with its clients in all things marketing, from public relations to web development to corporate social responsibility. Hey, Chuck, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate you having me on.
So glad you're here. I can't wait to dive into this topic with you. So let's start off by talking about this anti-agency that you've created. Tell us about A Purpose Partnership and why you called it an anti-agency.
Yeah, a little background. I've been in public relations marketing for close to 40 years now. That's what we're going on. Multiple agencies, all with the same issues that we run into. Best way to describe it, embracing what is known as the night shift, 9 to 5, go have dinner with your family, then come back and work till midnight. Burnout, as you mentioned, is a typical thing that occurs. So my partner, Adam Sinkus, and I got together. I was working with a particular agency here in Raleigh, North Carolina, and parted ways with them and said, there's got to be a better way. There truly, honestly, has to be a better way. So we created a purpose partnership, and both those words are very intentional. It's how we do it. We work with the purpose. We strip away the negatives, work with the positives, and we partner with our clients and our subject matter experts, as opposed to, being a vendor and working those guys to death, basically. So the anti-agency aspect of it is a couple of things. As I mentioned, the night shift doesn't occur with us. We have boundaries that we set for our clients and for our team in a positive way. And at the same time, we're not helicopter CEOs, best way to describe it. We don't come in at the last minute because a client calls the owner and says, hey, your team isn't doing it the way I want it to do. And they come in and say, well, okay, the client's right. That's kind of the bottom line. We work with our clients as partners. We meet with them as we have 3 managing partners, 2 co-founders and a managing partner. And we meet with them every single week. Our other tagline is strategists that do the work. We actually get in there, work with them, and become a true partner for them.
Love it. So let's dig into some of those negatives a little bit, because I know there's things that you've addressed that are negative, both from the client's perspective and from the agency owner's perspective. So let's focus on the agency owner's perspective for a minute, like working late nights. I kind of get the sense you've experienced some of that stuff personally. What were some of those issues that you've gone through?
Well, we run into a situation where, there would be late night phone calls from an agency owner for somebody who was a VP saying, hey, you need to address this right now. The client's concerned about it, and I want it done now. The way we work at A Purpose Partnership, if we get an email from a client, unless it's an absolute emergency, like a website's down or something going on, we'll wait till the following morning to address that, and within office hours. And while we're not training our clients per se, we're giving them the way we work in such a way that they are very comfortable with it. So that's a big aspect of it as well. And then the other part of that is the burnout. I mean, it's what we call checking the boxes. Hey, we've got a great culture and we're going to do some really cool things. And, we're going to do team building and all that stuff. Check the box, check the box. And then don't follow through. All of our folks are senior level folks, but they have an affinity for each other. They work well with each other. Our clients love what we do on status meetings, for instance, including small stuff like, hey, let's have a conversation about, their personal lives and what they've got going on. I'm infamous on Facebook for my dad jokes. They always ask for my dad jokes, so that's a big part of that. But, we're actively involved with them on a weekly, daily basis, and they respect that. And the other side of that is if they do not, or if they have issues, we have fired. We're on our second anniversary was the month of April of 2024. We fired 3 clients over the last 2 years because they were causing issues, micromanaging, whatever it may be. That's what we call the stripping away the negative.
So you mentioned earlier that this is not your first agency. You've been through
No.
a number of agencies. When did it occur to you that you really needed an entirely different agency model that was needed? And how did you go about setting that up?
I have the privilege of working with a really good friend of mine, and that's Adam Sinkus. And Adam and I started working together. Believe it or not, we met on Telegram, and that is, it's still active, not as active as it used to be, but we were both LinkedIn enthusiasts, and we joined a group, got actively involved with that. We created a thing called Pay It Forward Tuesdays, which is a nascent 501c3 that mentors small businesses, and we picked underserved entrepreneurs and nonprofits that we work with. Long story short, Adam and I started close to 3 years ago having conversations of why is this not working? Why are we having difficulties? He was my sounding board at agencies that I was involved with, a couple of different ones over the time we knew each other. And we said, at the time when it was an opportunity to, what are you going to do next? Basically for me, it was a case of, why don't we try to do this together? And the best way to describe it, Adam's my left brain, I'm his right brain. And we meet in the middle with a third managing partner who does a little bit of both. We call her the Venn diagram. So that's where we come from.
It's fascinating. And I imagine that this kind of a model has its own interesting opportunities as well
Mhm.
as some challenges. Can you share a little bit about what those might be?
Yeah, and the model, to walk it all the way through, we have three managing partners, but we then have another 8 subject matter experts on demand as we need them. And that's the other part of the anti-agency. We go to our subject matter experts when we have an opportunity, we sign a new client, and we come to them and say, hey, you know what, Stephanie, this is something that you might be interested in. Look at the client, make sure your subject is something you want to be involved with. Let us know, as opposed to an agency that signs a new client and then comes to you and say, hey, Mike Alton, guess what? You're now working on Acme Company. And
Yeah.
whether you want to or not, we use that pitch in new business, and that you end up with a very passionate team. And at the same time, those folks are passionate about what they do, and they deliver really good content and project work. That's kind of the bottom line. The negatives that we run into is engaging all of those subject matter experts enough to keep them engaged and involved. And at the same time, folks that they may try it out. Over the last couple of years, we've had several folks who have tried this out, tried to work with us, but then realized they need the steady paycheck. They need to be able to have the benefits, do whatever. And we've had several go back in full time, but still keep in touch.
Yeah, that makes sense because when I first read your description of this model, that was actually one of the first thoughts I had. It's like, oh, if I can pick or choose what projects I do or do not want to work on as one of your consultants, that seemed to me immediately to be a bit of a challenge to keep me busy or to find the right
Mhm.
consultants for clients. I'm also wondering about the clients themselves, because I imagine a lot of businesses come to you with their own baggage when it comes to working with agencies, some expectations maybe of how things are going to work. How have you worked through that?
Yeah, I mean, and honestly, that's one of our larger new business opportunities where we run into folks that, you know what, I've tried agencies and they keep screwing me, or whatever the problem may be. We run into that and we burn out on agencies. One of our really founding principles is that we want to work with clients who are passionate about what they do and aren't necessarily passionate about marketing. I mean, one of my favorite clients about a year or so ago came to us and said, I hate marketing. And that couldn't be a better thing for us to hear, because we love marketing. And our philosophy there is, we want you to do what you're passionate about, entrepreneur, small business, whoever it may be. Go do that. We'll take care of the marketing and bring you in when it's time to bring you in. So it's worked very well.
Love it. Love it. We're talking with Chuck Hester about ways you might adjust your agency model to serve you and your clients even better. If one of the areas you're struggling with now is how you offer social media services to your clients, I've got a story of another agency to share with you.
One, I love social media. I love what we do. I love, one of my sayings is that I feel like we're changing the world one post at a time. And the positivity, it's just, who I am. Currently, we are growing leaps and bounds. We just in the last couple of years have expanded our office. We're getting ready to expand again. We manage over 150 accounts just on Agora Pulse. So it has to be user-friendly for me and everyone that works with it, and it has to be something that I know that I can rely on, that I can trust. Like I said, and the biggest feature that we have is just the dashboard, that it is so easy to use and that anybody can use it. And actually, one of the reasons why I switched from the company that I had used before was that the lack thereof of customer service. It's definitely been, if not the best, one of the best companies to deal with as far as customer service.
You mentioned earlier that you'd fired 2 or 3 clients, I think you'd said, within a certain amount of time, which to a lot of agencies, that might sound shocking. A lot of folks that I've talked to have never fired a client, and they might have their reasons for doing that or not doing that. But I'd love to know from you, what shouldn't clients do and what might get them fired specifically? Some examples would be great.
Sure. Best way to describe it, if you are engaging an agency because of their expertise and what they're going to be able to do for you, don't tell them how to do it. Understand and collaborate with them as you go through. We do a lot of 6 month to a year marketing programs that we're putting together. One of the clients that we fired was a micromanager. I mean, he came in on a regular basis and said, no, this particular sentence doesn't work in your social media. We need to change it to this, those type of things. The ones that we are successful with and do well with are the ones that say, you know what, we trust you. We hired you because you are experts in your field. Go do your thing, and then collaborate with us and give us, issues that we run into so we can work through them together as partners. But again, the ones that we have really let go. I mean, there's always going to be folks in the agencies where there's non-payers. I mean, that's kind of one of the things. But the other part of that is the micromanagement aspect of a client. And it's hard for a entrepreneur who's built their baby up from, 0 to 1 million, $2 million, whatever. And they feel like they need to be involved in every single aspect of that business, including marketing. And that's where a lot of the entrepreneurial small to medium-sized companies fail, because they have owners or a team that really feels like they have to be actively involved, and they can't learn to trust the experts that they brought in to surround themselves with. We're the same way. We have experts in several different areas that we have. It's taken a little while, because both Adam and I were solopreneurs for a long time, to be able to let go and say, you know what, I put this person in that place because she's really good at what she does, and I'm going to go let her do that. So that's kind of the bottom line.
When you're working with a client like that in the early days, obviously not at the point where they've micromanaged or whatever, you're done, but early on, and you start to sense that, okay, this is one of those micromanaging clients that want to be involved, overly much.
Right.
Are there any things that you've done to try to establish more trust and rapport with that client that maybe have been a little successful and gotten some clients away from that mindset?
Yeah, part of that is, developing strategies and tactics and then executing on them, and then allowing that client to see the results of what we've done. If we're promoting a webinar and we're using organic social media and not spending a dime on digital, and then we fill that room, then that can be one way to say, hey, you know what, this is working. This is working really well. As you know, I'm a LinkedIn, I call myself a maven. I hate the term expert, but using LinkedIn in such a way, I do LinkedIn one-on-one training with some of the clients, and they go, oh, okay, can't say it any other way than, well, okay, cool. Chuck knows what he's talking about. So let me give him some leeway and let him do what he's doing because he's doing very well.
Love it, love it. So, the key message there is do the work, get some results, and make sure those are communicated to the clients, which is a great segue to my next question. I love asking this of agencies. So I want to know how you're measuring those results, particularly when, as you talked about, organic social media. Sometimes it's great if you've got a webinar and you can actually see X amount of people signed up, and then you can measure
Mhm.
their pipeline impact. But a lot of organic social media doesn't always have that direct correlation to business success. How are you measuring it for your clients?
Well, we are fortunate enough that LinkedIn is really good when it comes to analytics, to be able to work that through. Our managing partner, director of content marketing and social media is really good at putting analytical, and we will do a quarterly report on how things are going, what does it look like. But a lot of it really comes down to, because we work with Cs and VPs, to being able to see their LinkedIn or their Facebook or wherever they happen to be starting to get traction, and we will point those wins out. And again, as I mentioned earlier, we meet with our clients on a weekly basis, and if there's something that comes up where we're seeing, hey, Mike Alton's been mentioned 1,015 times in a particular post that we did, we'll bring it up because we want to make sure they are aware of what's going on. The hard and fast analytics is really more on the digital side, as to website visitors and the Google Analytics that Adam and his team are really, really good at. But it's, as you mentioned, and you mentioned a term that we learned as we go along, but we don't over communicate, but we definitely communicate with our clients. We have a status meeting the following day. There's a recap document that goes out with deliverables and things that the client needs to do and we need to do, with hard and fast deadlines as to when we're going to do that. Because we found, hey, you know what? We make assumptions sometimes that the client was listening on the status update, they knew what's going on. Not necessarily. I mean, it's always a very busy environment that you're dealing with entrepreneurial organizations and agencies.
That makes sense. And from what I'm hearing, I know there's a lot that you do that's very similar to a traditional marketing agency. You're doing marketing like anybody else, and a lot of that doesn't change. But I'm also curious what is different in terms of your approach with clients, and hoping maybe you could share one or two examples of projects or clients that you've worked on that just felt like they were a totally different approach.
Yeah, we have one client currently, a gentleman who runs an organization called Brands Constellations, and it's basically a one-on-one branding course that he has put together and consultation that he does with that. He considers us part of the team, and he considers us part of his success as he goes on. Steven Silverman is a different person in that he is a marketer and former Microsoft, totally understands it. But at the same time, he also understands he doesn't know everything. So we're able to work together with my team, and actually it's the three managing partners that are on his team. Those are the primary folks that work with them. But we work with Steven to the point where he can send an email and say, hey, you know what, I just need your opinion on this. What does this look like? He doesn't consider us an agency. He considers a success partner. Best way to describe that. And it shows in what we do. And we personalize it as well. He's based in Chicago. I went up to see him in Chicago recently. So, there is personalization that goes along with that, with caveats, making sure that there are professional boundaries in that. But it works very well. That's a good example of a partnership that we work with Brand Constellations.
That's a great example. And I love that you keep using the word partnership. A lot of
Yep.
times agencies were talking about clients and customers and
Mhm.
that vendor relationship, but this is a different kind of relationship where you have healthy boundaries in place. You have set expectations. There's a high level of communication there, not over communicating necessarily, but
Mhm.
definitely a high level of communication, a really successful partnership. Now, one thing I wanted to ask, we haven't really talked about tools, and I'm wondering, what tools are you guys using? Is there anything that you're using again that maybe is a little different from a traditional agency? Maybe not, but I'm just wondering if there's something out there that you're using that's uniquely helpful to this kind of a model.
Well, I would be remiss if I didn't say Agora Pulse is one of our major tools that we use, and we love that platform. We were talking about that pre-show, but we're very careful not to be wrapped up into the technology per se. And when we've talked about communication, when we establish a relationship with a client, we figure out, okay, what's the best way to communicate with that client? We love Slack, and we use it for a variety of things. We do like Zoom when I don't say that when it's working, but there's issues there. And both Adam and myself are podcasters, so we're using StreamYard, and I am using StreamYard for the best example I can give you. We just recently did a Q&A with the security director for one of our software company clients using StreamYard, and it was, the best way to describe it, raw video on, I'm off camera asking questions, he's answering questions, and we'll edit that down into a video and be able to use it that way. So those are primarily, we're very careful. We're also very lean. So we try to stay away from some subscriptions. As far as that goes, we're dipping our toes as well into AI. We definitely use ChatGPT on a regular basis, but we have one of our content creators who is what I described. And Mike, I think you and I were up in November at Ann Henley's conference, and we were talking specifically about the new position that could happen as an AI editor. So our folks will do blog posts using ChatGPT, but then we go back in and put client voice to it. So that's happening a lot, and professionally as well. I'm using it for status updates for LinkedIn, but also retooling some of my LinkedIn articles. Point on all of that is we are more human than we are subscription and tech stack per se, but there are certain things that we definitely need to use as far as that goes.
I love that response. Thank you for sharing that, because it's really important to, particularly today, to have that human element. AI, I'd be remiss if I didn't say AI is part of every single conversation that I'm having. I have multiple podcasts. We're always talking about AI, whether that was the point of the show or not. It naturally bubbles up. And thank you for that shout out, Gorbals. I appreciate that. Any final advice that you might want to share with agency owners who find themselves struggling with these late night work sessions, evening, weekend, holiday phone calls from clients expecting them to respond and act? Any final words of wisdom?
A couple of things. One, set the boundaries at the beginning of the relationship. Understand that this is what this looks like. My partner Adam is much better at it than I was. He trained me basically of getting an email at 9:00 at night that isn't terribly critical, not answering it till the following morning at 8 or 9 a.m. Took me a long time to not immediately respond, especially since I was developing some personal relationships with some of my clients. But the other part of that is we ran into trouble first year when, lack of a better way to put this, we started chasing the money. In other words, hey, let's take this client because they can pay the $10,000 a month retainer, $5,000, whatever it was, and we'll deal with all of the crap that we have to put up with this person in order for the invoice to get paid. When we stopped doing that and we, lack of a better way to put that, loosened the grip, if you will, on that aspect of it, the clients came in. They started working really well. And then of the 8 subject matter experts, team members that we work with, almost every single one of them came to us because they wanted to do some freelance work or whatever, and they were toying with going back into corporate. And then they realized, you know what, I really want to do what I'm passionate about. And that's the first question we ask when we're talking to them. What gets you up in the morning? Cliche question, but really, if you could not do anything else for the rest of your life, what would you want to do professionally? And sometimes it wasn't that corporate job or working for somebody else or whatever it may be. So, follow your passions. I mean, we do that to the person on a regular basis daily here at A Purpose Partnership, having a ball doing it. It allows us to do other really fun things. Like I'm now a correspondent for a local TechWire organization and doing some journalism like I was trained to do way back when I graduated, but I've always been a writer. So anyway, long story short, there's things that our folks love to do. And when they get a chance to just do that, they flourish. They really have a good time doing what they're doing.
Great advice. I particularly appreciate your point about taking clients for the sake of the money. And I get many of you listening to me right now may not be in a position financially to say no to an incoming project. It may be exactly what you need right now, despite the work or whatever. But those are the clients, to our earlier conversation, you probably need to offload and potentially fire at some point when you can afford to bring in some additional clients and bounce that workload. Yeah. Chuck, this has been so much fun. I appreciate you coming on and sharing this so much background in terms of what you're doing today and how and why.
Yeah.
For those who want to learn more about you and about a purpose partnership, where should they go to find you?
Well, there's a couple places. Purposepartnership.com is our website, but you can always find us on LinkedIn. I mean, that usually when I'm talking to folks, I just go look for me on LinkedIn, because I am a LinkedIn influencer and actively involved there. And that's kind of the best place to go. Or Chuck at purposepartnership.com. Like I do with my speeches, Mike, I'll end with this. If you think this was great, send me a LinkedIn invite and say, hey, Chuck, your presentation rocked and your conversation with Mike was great. And then I will definitely answer that LinkedIn invitation.
And if you didn't think it was great, that's okay too.
Yeah,
that's fine.
True.
But that's all we've got for today, friends. I hope you enjoyed this session with Chuck. Don't forget to find the Social Pulse Podcast Agency Edition on Apple and drop us a review. We'd love to know what you think. You can also find me on LinkedIn and say, hey, I heard your podcast and I didn't like it, but I'd still like to connect with you. That's fine too. I want to know that kind of feedback. Until next time, see you. Thank you for listening to another episode of Social Pulse Podcast Agency Edition, hosted by Mike Alton and powered by AgoraPulse, the #1 rated social media management solution, which you can learn more about at agorapulse.com. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe on your favorite podcast player and be sure to leave us a review. Your feedback is important to us.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Robbie Samuels hosts the On the Schmooze podcast. Robbie, tell listeners what to expect from the show.
Since 2015, I've interviewed entrepreneurs who overcame challenges to achieve success in their field or industry. Tune in to On the Schmooze to listen as I ask deep questions to elicit untold stories about leadership and networking.
And where can people subscribe?
Find the show at ontheschmooze.com or on marketingpodcast.net, or just search for it wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard them. Go subscribe. This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.